Hey folks, I'm Dieter Melhorn. If you fish for catfish, you need the perfect catfish bait. If you live west of the Appalachian Mountains, the one bait that you will hear repeatedly as being the best catfish bait out there is skipjack. I got a chance to sit down with the man who has probably caught more skipjack than any other man alive on rod and reel. That's Captain Billy Davis, also known as Melton Hill Bill. He's a striper guide on the Tennessee River in eastern Tennessee. Well, you may be asking yourself, what does a striper fishing guide know about catfish bait? Well, the bait he uses to catch the trophy monster striped bass that he puts in the boat is skipjack herring. Captain Billy Davis took the time to give me some insight on what these fish are about and how to catch them.
My understanding is skipjack herring is originally a saltwater fish. It is a Gulf of Mexico fish that has migrated up the Mississippi, the Ohio, Tennessee, all the way up to the Clinch. And they have migrated through the dams. They'll go up, get trapped in these reservoirs, breed like crazy, and they migrate upstream or in the early spring and the summer, do their business, and then they'll migrate back downstream. People compare them to tarpon. They run around in huge schools. They'll come up on little schools of bait fish. You'll see them jump out of the water, and you know, you can kind of tell what you're looking at from a distance, like, oh, that's a skipjack. Something I learned at a very young age is that's a lot of fun to catch.
The great thing about skipjack is they come in a variety of sizes that you can catch on rod and reel. Some people like the larger ones, some folks like using the smaller ones. Either way, they're a great bait for any predator fish that swims.
I guess about 2 years ago on Melton Hill, they had a huge spawn, and we were catching little baby skipjacks. I haven't seen those in a year, so I guess they haven't had a big spawn like they did, but I've caught them up to 4 pounds. We've caught and used several, world record fish.
Now, the biggest question most people have that are trying to catch skipjack is, how do you catch them?
I just use rod and reel. A couple jigs tied up about 18 to 20 inches apart. I think a lot of people don't catch them because they go too slow. The skipjacks being a saltwater species, they're intrigued by stuff that's moving extremely fast. And if you just throw a jig out there and fish it slow, they'll probably just come up, look at it, and take off. But if you give it real erratic action, turns them on, boom, they're gonna hit. And usually when you hit a school, you'll have 20 of them come in at the same time. They're kind of like piranhas. Real aggressive fish, probably the most aggressive, freshwater fish that I've ever seen.
Now, most folks don't have the luxury of fishing from a boat. As we all know, a boat affords you a lot more opportunities and access. So Billy has some important tips for bank anglers trying to catch skipjack.
If you sit in one spot and expect to catch them, you might be disappointed, because they'll come through sometimes and you might catch a couple, but then they're gone. Find a place that you can actually move up and down the shoreline. That might help you to run up and down the bank with them if you see them breaking. One thing, a lot of guys will go to the dams, of course. They like the flow of the current, but they're not always at the dams. Be prepared to move around, and if you see them, that's when you go try to chase them down.
Now, one of the most accessible areas, especially for bank anglers, is the area directly below the dams. Most of these dams, especially on the Tennessee River, have public access fishing areas. Now, besides the easy access for bank anglers, why are these areas so good?
I think any place that produces continuous current has a pump or a dam, and it's gonna be constant flow. It's like a buffet. Stuff goes through the dam, gets chopped up, and it comes through the flow. Well, that's continuous. Well, a lot of fish move up in there to eat that, You got to think on a small scale too. Anything that comes through the dam's going to get chopped up, and that's just going to bring little small fish in there to eat. It's going to start the whole food chain, and then you'll have bigger fish and then skipjacks, and of course, whatever's going to target them.
Now, if you don't have access to one of these dam areas to fish, good news, there are plenty of other areas, even from the bank, that you can catch skipjack.
Some places that are pretty productive are also culverts. When you have kind of a neck down effect and you have typically a muddier, warmer water bay, on the back side of a culvert, well, when it rains and comes through, all them nutrients get funneled through that culvert, and on the outside of that culvert, you'll have a lot of skipjack sometimes right there too. And if you have access to bank fish around a culvert, that might help.
Now, historically, skipjack are known for being caught near steam stations, especially in the wintertime when hot water is being discharged. But with fewer and fewer of these plants in operation, you need other access points to catch these fish.
I think they migrate. You know, in the wintertime, they'll be on the lower end of the reservoirs. In the spring, they do like a lot of other fish do, the stripers do. They make a run up river. So yeah, you'll have a riverine run for them to spawn. I mean, you probably could find them in some places all year long, but sometimes you'll find them more in the wintertime on the lower end of the lakes, and then in the spring and summer, they're running up.
Now, if you talk to any of the old timers who have been catching skipjack for a long time, there has been a decline in the number of fish, according to these anglers. Melton Hill Bill gives us a little insight on what the cause might be.
I think they come and go with the amount of vegetation. I think that you need good vegetation for them to spawn. On Melton Hill, Fort Loudon, Tellico, Watts Bar, you've seen some of the weeds grow back, and boom, you'll have, you know, really good populations of fish come back too. That just seems like when they allow the vegetation to grow, you'll see more fish. You'll see more skipjacks.
With fewer fish and more people wanting them for bait, there's a lot of pressure on them. So Melton Hill Bill has some pointers to keep in mind when you're chasing those fish.
I think the more they get pressured, they move. You know, I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, I think they can get overfished. You know, if there's a big school there and 10 boats come on them, they're going to leave. You know, they get real, you know, once you move them off their spot, sometimes they're gone. I can see that. I know they are boat shy. That's kind of why I get a little antsy when other boats come around me when we're catching skipjacks. They'll come by and, you know, try to catch them, and then they're gone. You know, that's what they do. They're boat shy, especially if you make too much noise. They will leave. I think just got to be stealthy. I think when you're trying to find these fish and not run your trolling motor too much, or just not make too many banging noises, because they will leave.
Skipjack, everybody loves them. They're a great catfish bait, arguably one of the best catfish baits. And if you can figure out how to catch them, you've got a bait that catfish will love.